Hi everyone, thank you for joining. We're excited to provide our weekly update for the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial. I know participants are joining right now, so we'll give them a few seconds and then we'll get started. Can we move to the next slide? We have a short agenda for today as always, because we always want to spend most of the time answering your questions, but we do want to provide a few updates because we continue to make progress in terms of adding treatments, sites, and enrollment. So let me provide a few updates for you. Next slide. We are now approved for 4 regimens. We started enrolling with 3, and we will be enrolling on the 4th very soon. So this is a perpetual adaptive trial, as you know, a trial where we are testing multiple drugs in a perpetual manner, meaning that we will continue to add new drugs. And in fact, we are already working towards adding the 4th, which should be available very soon. And again, the excitement here is that we can continue to test more drugs as they become available, and continue to offer spots and available trials to people with ALS. Other features of the trial design is that we have a placebo-controlled period that's 6 months long, but it's followed by an open label extension. So something that's important for us is to be able to offer an open label extension to people who complete the 6 months of placebo-controlled trial. And another great aspect of the trial is that the randomization ratio is in favor of active drug compared to placebo, and specifically the ratio is 3:1. What that means is that for every 4 people that enter the trial, only 1 will go on placebo and 3 will go on drug, and we can still draw meaningful scientific conclusions because we are actually sharing placebo data across different regimens. And this is really a feature of this infrastructure that we spent a few months building, and now it's open, it's up and running, and so we can test multiple drugs, and we'll continue to add more drugs to continue testing as many treatments as possible. Next slide. We are currently open at 33 sites. As you know, we selected a little over 50 sites. We have been working hard on opening them. The first few opened in July. We're continuing to add them, and with the hope of basically activating as many as possible before the end of the year. We will also add new sites in addition to the ones that were originally selected in 2021. We'll issue a call for new sites over the next few weeks, because again, the idea is to continue to expand not only the number of drugs that we're testing, but also the number of sites that are available. If you would like to know which sites are enrolling, you can go on our website, and that's the link there. And as always, we post the recordings and the slides on our website, so you can always go back to this presentation and to the slides, so you don't need to write down the link right now. It's available on our website. Next slide. So these are the actual 33 sites that are enrolling. I think that since we last spoke on this webinar series, we have had University of Maryland and SUNY Upstate activated, which is exciting. So welcome to these new sites, and that definitely opened the trial in different geographies. So we're very excited to be present in these new states. And again, the list is on the screen. Next slide. We continue to enroll participants. The current numbers are presented here. Over 200 people signed informed consent. That's the first step to begin working with us on the trial. 170 people with ALS were assigned to a regimen. And again, at this time, it's 3 regimens that are open, but the 4th will be added very soon. And 143 people are currently receiving study drug, meaning active or placebo, in a 3:1 ratio, active to placebo. And that's total across all regimens. And the good news is that because we are testing all the regimens in parallel, then we will have the results of the first few regimens roughly around the same time. And that's certainly a change, I would say a revolution in ALS research, because if you think about it, until now we would, testing one drug at a time, which means maybe every year we would have one result, but now we're having results sort of as a group. All the regimens that are currently up and running will have results roughly around the same time next year. So that's exciting. That's how we're accelerating the speed of the drug development. Next slide. And now I would like to introduce Alison and Catherine, who are here on the webinar with us as panelists. They are our wonderful patient navigators. They're available to take your phone calls and emails. So if you have any questions, in addition to the questions that we will discuss today on the webinar, please feel free to reach them at the phone and email here on the screen. And I know they've been working with many of you and answering questions. And Catherine, Alison, I don't know if you would like to introduce yourself and also mention your role and questions you may be receiving.
Sure. So yeah, I think Alison and I both kind of came equipped today with some questions that we wanted to spotlight that we've been hearing this week. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Catherine Small. I'm kind of the woman behind that number and the email address you see on the screen there. So if anybody here is somebody I've talked to this week, hello, nice to kind of meet you. I love getting your questions, and there's a lot of thoughtful comments that people send or bring up via phone. So thank you for sending those in. And one of the points that I kind of wanted to discuss a bit today, Dr. Paganoni, I was wondering if you could clarify, the difference between receiving clinical care for ALS and participating in clinical research for ALS. Is there any overlap, or what are some of the key distinctions there to keep in mind?
Thank you, Catherine, and I'll ask Merit to help answer that. I know some people have been asking you that question. I think it's a great question, very important one. So I'll start, and maybe Merit can weigh in. But from my point of view, I think obviously both are very important. I would say we always start with clinical care, and that's why it's important to discuss what options are available for you with your care team, including your physician, nurses, and the entire team, and discuss with them whether research might be a helpful addition to your care plan. So research obviously is optional. It can happen both, either at the center where you're receiving your care or at a different center. I would say, if you receive care at a center that's participating in this trial or other trials, obviously that makes things more streamlined, and so you don't have to kind of, go to different places. However, it's definitely possible to participate in research also at different sites. So let me stop there, and maybe I'll ask Mary to add, and we can continue the conversation.
No, I agree. I think I view research as part of your care, and to have those options for patients. Now, because there is a lot of interest in this particular trial, which is fantastic, some of the sites are actually enrolling first the patients that they know that are part of their clinic. And so I know that's a challenge for people who get their care at a site that's not yet activated, or perhaps is not part of the platform trial. And that's also part of the reason we want to add, at least 10 to 15 more sites. And we'll work with our patient advisory group to really make sure that we get them in the right geographic area so that everybody has an option.
Great.
We do have a few questions coming in, but I think maybe we'll go to Catherine's and Alison's first, and then leave time for those.
Yeah, Alison, anything on your end?
Yes, thank you. Hi to everybody. If I haven't met you, it's nice to meet you. I'm happy to be here, and I work with many of you every day, so I'm happy to help. And Sabrina and Merit, I was wondering, I'm hearing a lot of questions about the Parallel Expanded Access Program, and I was wondering if you might be able to give an update on where that might be and a timeline, kind of the status of that program.
Merit, would you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I'm very excited about it. But I don't have the exact timeline, because the timeline will depend on getting the following. We need the FDA approval, and usually that's less than 30 days, but we haven't asked for it yet for the first one, because we're working on the protocol. We need the IRB approval, and then we need the drug supply. So the first one that we're going to start with, I hope, will be with Biohaven, which is regimen B. And we're going to have enough drug and enough support for 35 participants at 3 centers. So that will be the first one. I'm hoping it'll be in the first quarter of 2021. Obviously, we're trying to make it in the beginning part of that first quarter, but until we have the approvals, I can't guarantee that. I can only guarantee that Sabrina and myself and our team are working as fast as we can on that. The second one, I think, will be with Perlania, which is regimen D. I think that will be later in the first half of 2021. And again, a lot of this is driven by drug supply. And then we are talking, obviously, to UCB Raw. And our plan, our ultimate plan is that we always have it going. We just have to get going on the first couple. But as we add more drugs to the platform, that will be part of the contracting from the start. So they'll be built in, and we'll always have those options.
Great. I think we have one more slide before we go to your other questions. This is just a reminder of the fact that we will continue to give these weekly updates. So please find the schedule and registration links, as well as the PDF of the slides and the video recordings on our website. Please check out the schedule, because obviously with the holidays there might be some changes, but then we want to continue to provide these updates on a regular basis. And we will also have webinars with each company about the mechanism of action and the science of each drug. Those are coming up, I think, in January. And with that, Merit, would you want to go through the questions?
Yeah. So there's a question about, due to COVID, my last appointment was virtual. I got the blood work done in a local lab. Luckily, I have enough drug, but if my next visit is canceled, will the drug be able to be shipped to me? And this is for regimen C.
Yes, so basically we made changes to the protocol to accommodate the possibility of virtual appointments if needed because of COVID, exactly as you explained in your question. So I'm glad that this is actually happening, and you are, you're part of this. So basically the idea is to allow people to continue to participate in the trial, doing virtual appointments and local blood tests if needed because of the pandemic, and that will include shipping of the drug as needed, again, depending on the supply and how much you have and when the next visit is. But yes, we're working on all of this.
I might add that we did write this all in the protocol, and we have it all approved because we realized that there might be a second surge. I mean, it would be hard not to realize that might happen. So we wanted to be prepared. But for the trial, and honestly, and for the ability to tell if a drug works or not, it's much better if we can see people in person, because then we can get all the outcome measures. My biggest worry, and we saw this a little in the brainstorm trial, because of the COVID, there were very few last visit breathing assessments, and that means that we couldn't tell if the drug did anything on that. And after all the work and everything people are putting into this, that would be not a great outcome. So we want to balance, safety for people, safety for the staff, but also being able to get results in the trial. So we are encouraging sites, if they can, to see people in person, and really only use the virtual if it's really a safety issue that people can't come in. The other thing I'd say is all good, with all our good intentions to get this working as well as possible, COVID is still making it challenging. So the home nursing group that we hired to do the blood work, they're ready, but we can't get the kits to them for the blood drop, because there's a global supply chain problem for those supplies because of the COVID vaccine studies that are taking all those supplies, which, there's not a whole lot we can do. We are arguing against, for us to be a priority, but that one's an uphill battle. So anyway, so we're allowing local labs, and we're trying to, obviously everybody's being as flexible as possible, but it's not perfect yet. There's a question about which drug or regimen will give an ALS patient some physical functions back.
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously, we would hope that, many of them would have that result. Obviously, the drugs were selected because of the robust science, which we will continue to present in future webinars. And with the, in the lab, obviously, they had positive outcomes in the lab models. Now, as we give it to people, the hope is that they will be able to give substantial results. But obviously, we won't know until we test them. And so, all drugs that are in in the trial, they're all equally promising from that point of view. We just need to do the testing and see which one works best. And that's why it's so great to test them in parallel, because, you know, again, we can have multiple answers and test many drugs at the same time.
Yeah, I want to add that, I mean, there's two things I want to add. One is, if we have a drug that's really effective, the body has a natural way to repair itself. You know, polio is a good example of where people lost a lot of their motor neuron function from the virus. And once the body cleared the virus, people's nerves, the surviving motor neurons resprouted and reattached the muscle, and people got function back. And I do think that's possible in ALS, but you have to have the drugs that are effective at stopping what's causing the motor neuron injury. And there are some companies working on ways to augment that natural repair process. And that's an area that the Healey Center has identified as one of our top priorities for 2021, is to try to really support some global research on those repair pathways. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is that there was this call for a prize called the SURF Prize by one of our families that we take care of. And that was to for anyone in the world to come up with ways to improve function for people with ALS, whether that was an engineering solution or a drug or chemical solution. And that we've gotten amazing applications for that. And so that's going under review now. So I do think there's a lot of hope on approaches to restore function for people. So there's a couple questions about the EAP. So one is has there been a selection criteria determined for the EAP enrollment? I aged out for symptom duration for HEALEY trial. And then related to that, and maybe Sabrina can answer both of these, with the EAP program, is it limited to one therapy at a time?
So the selection criteria for the EAP enrollment, again, we are working on them now. I can tell you that based on the experience that we have with the other single center EAP studies that we've done so far, the selection criteria are very broad, meaning that we try to make it as accessible as possible. Obviously, the two main criteria are that somebody needs to have ALS, and that they have, you know, that we don't, that there's no safety concern for the particular person. So obviously, if that person is having some sort of uncontrolled, unrelated medical problem, it might not be a good idea to be in the EAP. But other than that, which obviously is rare, you know, the criteria are very relaxed. Now, there might be, depending on the drug, some medication interaction, some specific things that make that particular drug not safe in that particular person, but again, those are sort of limited criteria. It's definitely much more accessible than regular trials. You know, even our trial, which is more accessible than others. I mean, it has to have criteria for certain statistical reasons in EAPs, because really the main goal is not so much to have efficacy results, but it's to give access. But as a result, the inclusion-exclusion criteria are very broad.
Yeah, and related to that, there's a question about whether you're doing any biomarkers in the EAP, and this will vary by EAP, but you can put those in there. You know, the more you put in, the more complicated the EAP is, but it can give you some information that I think can really help, should that drug be positive in a double blind, to be able to show that it has a similar effect in a slightly different population. So at the International MND meeting next week, I know we have a poster on EAP, and we have some papers we're writing about it, because we want to get it out there that it's a good thing to do and it's safe to do, and you can learn from it. There's also a question, is there going to be a placebo in the EAP?
No placebo.
No. That's the whole idea. It's compassionate use where you're giving access to it. We do have to do the same safety as Freeman's, you know, the FDA and the IRBs, and you know, you have to do the same safety in an EAP that you would do in a trial. So are you in talks to add any platform trial sites in Canada? Someone is they say they're constantly reading and hearing from Canadian patients who want to be included. I can maybe answer that if you want, Sabrina.
Please.
Yes, we are. So you know, before COVID, you know, we had already arranged and done a lot of work to make it easy for patients from Canada to go to sites like Boston or Seattle, or the, you know, the kind of along the northern coast, you know, in the temporaries. But that's obviously become harder because of travel for people. We are in discussions with the Canadian patients as well as the sites. And so Sabrina and I did a presentation on the platform with the, it's called HEALES, which is a Canadian ALS consortium like NEALS, to get their input on if they're interested, the sites in particular, that they're actually going to get back to us, I think, later this week or next week, assuming that at least 5 sites in Canada are interested, where they're then going to go to Health Canada, which is the FDA equivalent, and talk about it and get their buy-in. And if that all happens, the thought would be maybe next year. So not these first 4 drugs, but future drugs, we could have some sites in Canada. It's not a small deal to add Canada. It sounds like it might be easy, but it's actually a lot. It's a big cost, which is not the driving reason for not doing something. But you have to translate all the documents. You have to get all the approvals there. All the vendors have to be in that country, so it adds complexity. But if the patients are interested and the site investigators are interested, we want to make that happen in the next round. Someone's asked, how can I enroll in the expanded access program?
Yeah, so at this time, there's actually few expanded access programs available, sort of few in the country. But now again, when we open this, we're going to go to different sites. It's still going to be a small program, as Merit suggested, 35 for the first one, and then again, we want to continue to add. So I think it would be kind of a conversation with the physicians at those sites. You need to have care. Actually, a difference for EAPs. You need to have established care at the particular site, clinical care, to be considered for an EAP, because that's not considered, technically speaking, just research. It's considered an expansion of your clinical care for access to a drug. So that's why that's important, as opposed to randomized trial where you can actually participate in a different clinic.
And what we're trying to do by writing about it a little bit is to get the word out to sites and patients about what it takes to start an EAP program at your site. And the positives, it's a great thing to have to offer your patients that can't be in other trials for whatever reason, but it also takes resources. So for example, in our EAP program at Mass General, we have 3 full-time coordinators and probably half of a nurse who that's all they do. They work with me. I don't know if that's probably an added cost for them, but they work with me closely for the EAP program. And we have about 90 people in that program. So it's great. I love it. It's definitely worth the investment. But for other sites, they need to be able to make that investment. And we're hoping by putting that information out that maybe the ALS Association or the MDA or the groups that support centers can also contribute some to help centers create these EAP programs locally. There's a question, could you give us some details about the BIP 100 trial? Sabrina, do you want to?
Yes, I'm not directly involved. I know that obviously it's ongoing. I've had a few patients in the trial. I know it's a great, experimental compound that is being tested by Biogen, and so I think it's definitely one of the promising compounds out there. So again, I'm not directly involved. I don't know, Merit, if you have any more information, but I know it's ongoing.
BIP 100. I always forget which numbers. Which is that
it's the
nuclear pore drug?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the target is really important. I think it's something called nuclear transport. So we know that in people with ALS, there's a leakiness of the membrane that surrounds where your genetic material usually is housed, called the nucleus. And that leakiness makes the genetic material go in the wrong place in the cell and perhaps lead to the downstream problems. So this is a drug that improves that membrane, makes it less leaky. So people are really excited about that target. It's in early phase testing, just safety and dose finding, and hopefully we'll then go on to phase 2 testing, phase 2/3 testing later. So it's a great drug. It's targeting all forms of ALS. Can you review the findings from Brainstorm, and is there a reason for encouragement from the most recent results? I'm happy to answer that one too. And on December 9th, and actually December 9th, there's a talk on it at the International MND meeting. And today is the last day to register for that meeting. I think at our last call, one of the participants told us it was 45 pounds, I think, which is true to register. We just registered a whole bunch of people today. That's how I know today's the last day. and so there'll be a talk on it there. But and hopefully after that, a bunch of presentations for patients. I think the big picture is, unfortunately, it was a negative trial when you took all comers and looked at the primary outcome measure, and that's hugely disappointing. But there were some pre-specified subgroup analyses, and including looking at people who were above ALS functional rating scale of 35 when they started treatment, compared to those that were below. And there does seem to be possibly a signal of efficacy in the group above 35. So that needs to be further explored with some of the biomarker work to see if one can, maybe predict a group that would be more likely to respond. And that's the data that we'll show next week, and that I think the company is going to hopefully go forward to the FDA to discuss. But I think it's not clear what's going to be the next step, other than, I firmly believe that if there's any hope of a signal of a positive drug, one has to keep exploring it until you're clear on the answer, whether it's positive or not. But I don't think it's not a straightforward answer, unfortunately, yet. So the last question I see, at least typed here, is depending on the patient, is it possible for their body to protect or regenerate their own motor neurons? And does this happen in slow progressors? That's a great question. I don't know, Sabrina, if you want to.
Yeah, it's a great question. I can start, and I mean, I don't know that we know the answer for sure to this question, which is so important. I would imagine, again, thinking about other diseases, other neurological conditions, as you mentioned earlier, that if the sort of the primary cause is stopped or removed, I would imagine that there are actually some internal regeneration processes that happen. For example, they do happen in nerves when there is a trauma, and they can regenerate when, for example, a nerve is cut, and it can actually regrow. We know that happens. Now, obviously, we do need to find ways to, treatments to stop or remove the original cause. And so that would be, I think, as we can kind of lower or remove the components of the cells that are not working well, then we know that the nerves do have some intrinsic capabilities to regenerate. I don't know that it happens normally, but certainly it's something that that would be a valuable goal, and something that we certainly can work on to make it happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think when we do that awful test, the EMG test for diagnosis, we kind of see that your body is trying to regenerate, because you can see the units looking different, as if they're trying to grow and sprout. So we know the body can do that in ALS. It's just that it can't keep up with what's causing the motor neurons to be damaged. That's why I'm hopeful that if a drug can slow the damage, your body can repair itself, but it might need augmentation. So one of the things we did in August, we had the ALS Finding a Cure Foundation sponsored a 3-hour video Zoom call on repair of peripheral nerves, and we invited people from other fields like neuropathy or nerve injury to come and tell us what they're doing, so that we could start to think about this in ALS. And I know that foundation wants to form some global teams of the best people to really tackle this for ALS next year. And we've been talking to different foundations about, could we all partner together to really fund really good work in regeneration for ALS. So that's one of my non-HEALEY platform goals for the year, is to try to help facilitate that. But obviously, I'm not the only one interested in that. There are a lot of people interested in that. It's an important thing to do in ALS. And that we're even talking about repair and regeneration in ALS is super helpful.
Yeah.
Any last comments, Allison or Catherine? Well, it's great to see everybody. I see a lot of return names, so it's great to see you guys and some new names. So hope to see everybody next week as well.
Absolutely. Let's talk next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.